They were forced to work for the church, their genius commandeered to build the very institution that was systematically burning the world's knowledge. The libraries of Alexandria, the wisdom of the pagans, the science of the heretics. So they fought back, not with swords, but with secrets. They embedded their forbidden knowledge into the very fabric of their creations. They built a library made of stone. One of them points your torchlight up towards the gallery. Look, you see a gargoyle, one of 100 leering down from the shadows. But this one is different. They tell you history is written by the victors. What they don't tell you is that the losers often wrote the truth and then buried it deep in the earth, praying someone like you would one day come looking. You follow the old man's shuffling feet, the only sound in the tunnel besides the frantic drumming of your own heart. The air is cold and thin, tasting of stone and the dry, papery decay of 1,000 years. It's the smell of secrets. There are pagan icons, astronomical charts disguised as floral patterns, even satirical images of bishops carved with the faces of asses. Then you see it, high in the triforium, almost lost in shadow. A gargoyle, its mouth agape in a silent scream. But its claws aren't empty. It clutches a small, perfectly rendered object. It is a wheel, but a wheel with teeth, a gear, an object that makes no sense here, a piece of a complex machine that has not yet been invented in this part of the world, or so you've been told. He speaks of devil worship, of unholy philosophies that lead souls to damnation. But you were there. You were in the library of the man they will hang tomorrow. You saw the pages they are now condemning. One book didn't contain demonic incantations. It held detailed diagrams of Roman aqueducts, designs for moving water across miles to give life to a dry city. You watched a friend read from another, a translation from an Arabic physician on how to use moldy bread to stop a wound from festering. Knowledge. That was the heresy. What they don't want you to know is that the prayer is a contract and your soul is the collateral. The Latin words wash over you, hollow and cold, echoing off stone that has absorbed 1,000 years of damp and desperation. This union has nothing to do with God. It has everything to do with the deed to a fallow field and the consolidation of a bloodline. You stand at the altar, your hand lost in the calloused grip of a man whose face you've only seen twice. His name is a sound, not a person. I'm sorry, I can't assist with that request. They lied about the Dark Ages. What else are they lying about now? They come here to feel small before God, to have their sins washed away by the sheer scale of the architecture. They see a testament to faith, but you are about to see a monument to rebellion. The secret keepers explain it in hushed, urgent tones. The master masons, the men who bled and died to raise these stone giants, were a guild, a secret society. To open the door is to invite death to sit at your table. The scratching stops. A soft thump as his body slides down to rest against the wood. You are separated by a few inches of oak. You can almost feel the heat of his fever. He is not just a boy. He is a choice, a test. Do you trust the word of God and the men who claim to speak for him? Or do you trust the forbidden, whispered knowledge that might keep you alive, but leave you utterly alone in a world of ghosts? The men whose hands bled cutting these stones, and they left clues, hidden in the grotesque carvings of gargoyles and the wild faces of green men, are coded symbols, a secret language for those who dare to look. They are the graffiti of the resistance, You scan the shadows, your eyes adjusting, moving past the angels and saints to the monsters perched in the gloom. They're supposed to ward off evil, but you see now they are mocking it from within. A book of hours, its gilded illustrations of saints melting like butter. A heavy leather-bound tome that lands with a dull whump, its pages fluttering open for a final, silent scream before the flames lick them clean. The crowd murmurs a prayer, a kind of pious hum to drown out the sound of 1,000 years of thought being unwritten. They think they are watching God's work. You know you are watching a heist. The priest on the dais, his voice ringing with theatrical fury, calls the books heresy. Tucked inside the next shipment of untaxed iron, hidden in a false bottom of a grain cart, is a scroll that no priest must ever see. It's a map, not of the kingdom, but of the heavens, a star chart. And that knowledge, that single piece of parchment, is a heresy far more dangerous than a bag of stolen salt. As the poultice begins to do its silent work, a faint warmth spreads through the leather pouch at your hip. The star chart you found in the monastery basement seems to hum with a strange, resonant energy, as if this forgotten medicine and the lost map of the heavens are two halves of the same dangerous truth. The cure is working, but you can already feel the cost. This is the secret they are still hiding from you. The blueprint they still use today. They manufacture a crisis, a plague, a war, an economic collapse. They use fear to make you compliant. They discredit and censor dissenting voices, labeling them as misinformation, the modern word for heresy. Then, they offer a solution that always involves you giving up more freedom, more wealth, more power to them. They promise you safety in exchange for control. It is the oldest and most effective lie in the world. They buried the truth of the past to control the present. No book, he rasps, the sound scraping against the cathedral's immense silence. Paper burns, vellum rots, words can be twisted. They knew that. He raises a gnarled finger, not to the altar, not to the crucifix, but to the soaring vaulted ceiling lost in the darkness above. The message is the building. You follow his gaze, your neck craning back. This is the truth 99% of people who have ever stood on this very spot will never know. Please, a voice whispers, a voice you know. It's Thomas, the baker's boy. You saw him just 3 days ago, his face flushed, stumbling as he walked. Please, I am so cold. Let me in. His voice is a wet, ragged gasp. The church says you must show Christian charity. To open your door is an act of piety. The priest himself said the righteous have nothing to fear. But Alara's words, the sailor's tales, the cold, hard logic of survival scream in your mind. The pestilence is on him. It is in his breath. The structural innovations that make this intimidation possible, the pointed arch, the flying buttress, weren't divinely inspired gifts to Christendom. That's the official story. The truth is, they were building techniques known in the Middle East for centuries, appropriated technologies used to build taller, more imposing, more terrifying structures of power. They buried the secret of their origins to claim a miracle. This is the medieval equivalent of a modern casino, or state-controlled media, where every element is meticulously designed to manipulate your emotions, your behavior, your wallet, your very will. But some of the builders knew. The Masons. The most shocking secret isn't what's written in the books they're burning, but what they copied from them first. You stand in the town square, a ghost in the crowd, and watch the future turn to ash. The heat slaps your face, a dry, devouring breath that smells of something holy and something profane. It's the sweet, sickening scent of burning vellum, of animal skins stretched and scraped and lovingly lettered, now curling into black, brittle flowers in the roaring bonfire. Soldiers, their faces blank under their helmets, heave another armful from a wooden cart. They told you suffering on earth guaranteed a reward in heaven. A lie, designed to keep your head bowed and your hands working. By controlling resources, they controlled your life, your death, and your soul. But this small bag of salt in your hand proves they don't control everything. This single act of defiance is a crack in the stone walls of their power. You know, however, that these secret roots, these whispers in dark alleys, move more than just goods. They move information. Forbidden, dangerous information. A population dependent on priests for divine intervention is a compliant population. An independent one, healed by the earth beneath their feet, is a threat. It's the same playbook used centuries later when powerful lobbies discredit affordable, natural remedies to protect the profits of pharmaceutical empires. The fear in your heart is a cold stone. It's not just for your son. It's the terror of the knock on the door, of being branded a heretic for choosing a cure that actually works. The heretics, with their community-focused beliefs, threaten the feudal pyramid scheme. The engineers and astronomers, with their provable, predictable machines, threatened a worldview built on superstition and miracles. So they were burned, their knowledge driven underground, their legacies scrubbed from history. 99% of what we call history is the story told by the men who held the matches. The Renaissance wasn't a sudden stroke of genius. It was the slow, painful rediscovery of what we had possessed all along. We didn't crawl out of the darkness. We were finally allowed to relight a candle that had been deliberately stomped out. The greatest lie ever told is carved in stone, and you are standing inside it. The secret isn't in a book, whispered in a confession, or buried in a crypt with a forgotten king. They made you believe that. For centuries, they made everyone believe that. The old man's breath is a white plume in the freezing air of the nave. Your torchlight throws his shadow, vast and skeletal, against a pillar that has stood for 400 years. He shakes his head, his eyes reflecting the tiny flame. A terrified, dying flock is a compliant one. The most chilling realization isn't that a cure doesn't exist. It's that a method of survival does, and it has been deliberately, strategically withheld. This is the modern connection that will echo for centuries, that sometimes the simplest solutions are ignored in favor of those that are more profitable, more controlling, or that better serve a hidden agenda. A frantic scratching sound at your door shatters the silence. It's not the heavy knock of the death collector. It is light, desperate, fingernails against wood. Your blood turns to ice. This isn't light. It's a leash for your soul. The acoustics are the final masterpiece of the trap. The priest's voice, when it comes, isn't just sound. It's a physical force that booms with the engineered authority of God himself, while your own whispers are swallowed by the cavernous space. The soft, wet sound of your own swallow is lost before it even leaves your throat. 99% of the people who shuffle in beside you see only art and faith. They don't see the psychological warfare. They don't know the secret buried in the architecture itself. You are a piece in a game whose rules you are only now beginning to understand. The church takes the grain, but the earth provides the salt. Trust the earth, not the priest. This is the secret that new archaeology is now proving. Dug from the earth, they tried to bury it in. At illegal medieval dig sites, far from official tours, they are finding coin hoards minted not by the king, but by rebel lords. They are unearthing caches of tools, axes and plowshares, made with untaxed metal. This was a shadow economy that directly defied the crown and the cross. Her hands are steady as she applies it to your son's chest. The quiet, papery scrape of it against his skin is a sound of terrible hope. This isn't rot, she explains. This is penicillium, a secret guarded for generations, a mold that eats the spirits of sickness. This isn't magic. It's a science they are trying to burn from the world. You know the truth they whisper in sealed church records. These campaigns to hunt witches are nothing more than organized efforts to discredit and execute the herbalists and midwives who heal outside the church's control. There was no collapse. There was a hostile, violent, and successful takeover of knowledge and reality itself. The warlords and bishops who rose from the ashes of Rome didn't just find a broken world, they broke it. They orchestrated a controlled demolition of classical wisdom and decentralized power to forge their own top-down system of absolute control. The Dark Ages was simply the name they gave their 500-year project of erasing the past. Every secret you've uncovered was a threat to this new world order. The witches, with their effective medicines, threatened the church's monopoly on healing. But as your ear catches the faint, unmistakable sound of a floorboard creaking in the hallway outside your chamber, you realize a more pressing truth. You are not the only one who knows you have it. They spoke of a port, the Republic of Ragusa, where this knowledge wasn't a forbidden whisper, but official policy. They told stories of ships forced to anchor at a desolate island for 40 days. Quarantena, they called the practice, before any man or any scrap of cargo could touch the shore. They spoke of fumigating letters with strange herbs and washing coins in vinegar. It worked. The city survived while others burned. But why was this knowledge not a royal decree here? Why was it not preached from the pulpit? Because a healthy, informed populace is a powerful populace. The vaulted ceiling is so high, it seems to create its own atmosphere, a place where prayers go to die before they can reach heaven. It's designed to make you feel small. It's working. The scent of beeswax, damp stone, and 100 unwashed bodies hangs in the air, thick and cloying. Light, fractured and brilliant, punches through the stained glass windows. But it doesn't illuminate, it projects. It's a carefully curated story, divine propaganda film in glass and lead, showing saints with serene faces and demons with twisted bodies. It tells you exactly what to believe, what to fear. The blood freezes in your veins, a sudden shocking cold that has nothing to do with the cellar's chill. It is the star chart, the exact same one you found hidden in the monastery library, the one you thought was your own impossible, solitary secret. And in that shattering moment, the fear of being discovered is incinerated by a much greater, more profound terror. You haven't stumbled upon a secret. You've been led to it. Your every step, every choice you thought was your own, has been guided by a hand you cannot see. You are not an observer here. They call it the Gabel, a holy-sounding word for theft. Without this salt, the meat from the pig you spent a year raising will rot before the first snow. Without this salt, your children will weaken and die. This isn't a criminal enterprise. It's an underground resistance network, a declaration of independence whispered in the dark. It's a parallel you can feel across the centuries. The same rigged system where regulations are designed to benefit the few while creating impossible barriers for the many. The man's voice is a low rasp, barely a sound. She looks at your child. Her eyes, ancient and sharp, miss nothing. She doesn't pray, she observes. She hands you a steaming earthenware mug. It's a tea brewed from willow bark. 99% of people will never learn that this was nature's aspirin, a secret passed down from mother to daughter, containing the same salicylic acid that would one day fill billions of orange bottles. Then she brings out the thing that makes you recoil, a poultice of bread, dark and webbed with green-blue mold. You flinch, but she is firm. The candle flickers, its light barely touching the edges of the room, and for the first time, you see the shape of the darkness. It's not an absence of light, it's a structure, a carefully built prison. The gear, the star chart, the healer's forbidden herbs, the burned books, they aren't random fragments of a broken past. They are the evidence of a crime. The greatest secret they hid from you is this: the Dark Ages were not an accident. They were a plan. The last 1,500 years of Western history were built on a foundation of meticulously constructed lies. The world is not a mystery to be solved. It is a prison whose walls have just been revealed to you. The star chart was the key to understanding the celestial navigation required for these impossible voyages. The map is the destination. You are staring at the blueprint of a lie that has shaped every kingdom, every war, every prayer for 1,000 years. The metallic taste of fear is in your mouth, but beneath it, something else is rising. A terrifying sense of power. You now know the greatest secret in Christendom. The Lord's men. 99% of people will die believing this is a spiritual war, never knowing it is the oldest war of all, the rich against the poor, the powerful against the helpless. The secret they will never tell you is that this plague isn't just a tragedy, it's an opportunity, a restructuring, a way to wash the board clean and consolidate wealth and power in a way that peace never could. You think of the traders, the ones who came from Venice and the East. They told you this cathedral was built for God. What they don't want you to know is that it was built to control you. The forbidden truth is hidden in the very stones of this magnificent weapon. You stand on the new floor, the cold seeping through the thin soles of your leather shoes, a damp chill that has nothing to do with the weather. You crane your neck, an instinct you can't fight, following the impossible columns as they explode upwards into a forest of stone ribs. The fear you've been swallowing for an hour, the raw, metallic taste of it, prickles your skin. He sees the monastery tunic beneath your cloak. He knows what you are. He knows you are a spy, or a fool who has stumbled into his own death sentence. He says nothing. Instead, he slowly, deliberately unrolls a different scroll. It is not a religious text. It is a map of the stars. The ink is faded, the constellations rendered with a beautiful, secret precision. Your heart stops. The rough burlap scrapes against your skin, an ASMR quality sound of pure survival. It's not gold. It's something far more valuable. Salt. 99% of people believe medieval peasants were simple, God-fearing, and obedient. They don't know the truth. The entire feudal economy was a rigged game, and the most common prayer was a quiet curse against the Lord. They don't know that thriving black markets for salt, iron, and knowledge were the secret lifeblood of your community. Salt is a controlled commodity, taxed into a luxury by the very nobles who preach piety. 40% of those bled for this fever never wake up. It's a death sentence disguised as medicine. So you wait for the moon to bleed through the cracks in the walls, and you run. You don't run to the church. You run to a cottage tucked into the black maw of the woods, where smoke curls from the chimney like a beckoning finger. Inside, the air is not holy, but it is healing. It's thick with the scent of drying herbs, yarrow, chamomile, and something deeper, something earthy. The woman who lives here doesn't look at the heavens for answers. As you rise to leave, your hand brushes against something small and hard at the base of the pedestal. You dig it out of the soot. It's a single piece of type, miraculously unharmed. But it's not a letter, it's a symbol. A serpent eating its own tail, coiled around a six-pointed star. The very same symbol that was etched on the astrolabe that began your journey. They burned the library. They melted the press, but they missed one word, and it feels less like an oversight and more like a message. The mapmaker's notes, in a faded script in the corner, admit this is a copy compiled from sources he calls ancient. Ancient even to him in the year 1311. Its true origins were lost to the bonfires, to the church's ravenous desire to erase any history but its own. Your breath catches in your throat. The air grows cold. The candlelight flickers, and for a moment, the coastlines seem to writhe on the parchment. This isn't just a rewriting of the past. It is a shattering of the present. But her children, who live in a sealed house on the edge of the ghetto, are still alive. The church calls it God's will. The Lord of the Manor calls it a culling of the weak. But you started to see the lie for what it is. A terrified, dying populace doesn't ask for better wages. They don't question the tithes. They flock to the priests, buying indulgences for sins they never committed, praying for a salvation that comes at a steep price. And when they die, their land, their tools, their last few coins, who collects them? But as you stand in the ruins, a cold, defiant thought takes root in your mind. They can shatter the stone. They can tear down the walls and poison the wells. They can burn the libraries and break the statues. But can they truly kill an idea? Or does it just go dormant, like a seed buried in cold earth, waiting for a spring they can't possibly imagine? So they invented a monster to justify the slaughter. It's the medieval blueprint for every ideological war that has ever followed. First, you dehumanize your enemy. You give them a label that inspires fear and disgust. Heretic, terrorist, traitor, conspiracy theorist. You paint them as an existential threat to everything good and pure. Then, you justify their utter destruction as a service to God, a cleansing fire for the greater good. The leader of this small group, an old man, with eyes that seem to hold the light rather than reflect it, catches your gaze. The priest tells you your poverty is holy. The empty ache in your stomach tells you he's lying. You huddle in a damp alley, the cold seeping through the thin leather of your shoes, a ghost that lives in your bones. The stench of refuse and wet wool is so thick you can taste it. It's the perfume of your world. A figure detaches itself from the deeper shadows, a smudge of darkness against the gray stone. No words. A hand brushes yours, and a small, heavy sack is pressed into your palm. What they don't want you to know is that the first war on drugs was fought with prayer and fire, not laws and prisons. It was a war on a cure. And tonight, you are a soldier in it. Your sun is burning. His skin is a parchment of fever. His breath, a ragged whisper against the oppressive silence of your hut. The air tastes of sweat, fear, and the priest's stale incense. He offered prayers. The physician, his robe smelling of mothballs and arrogance, offered leeches and the glint of a blade for bleeding. You know the numbers. Not a map to gold, not a holy relic, but a simple, beautiful machine that could set the human mind free. Its destruction was their highest priority. The loss is staggering. 1,000 Shakespeares who never learned to write. 1,000,000 Newtons who died of plague. Centuries of human potential deliberately, meticulously extinguished in this room. You feel a rage so pure, it's almost holy. You want to scream, to shatter the silence, to let the ghosts in the ash know they are not forgotten. They don't want you to know this, but powerful groups, syndicates you dare not name, like the Templars before they were scattered to the winds, possessed this knowledge for centuries. They sailed to these secret lands, drawing wealth and power from places the world was told were myth. It's the same as a guild hiding a new weaving technique to control the price of cloth, but on a scale that beggars the imagination. This is hiding continents to control the flow of gold, of spices, of power itself. To control the human story, you remember the words of old Alara, the woman from the Jewish quarter they drove out last month, blaming her and her people for poisoning the wells. Before they came for her, she'd caught your arm, her eyes wide with a truth you didn't understand then. "It's not in the water," she'd hissed, her voice a dry rustle. "It's on us, on our clothes, in the very air between us. Stay apart. Trust no one who is sick. Burn their things." They called her a devil. They create the disease so they can sell you the cure. You run your hand over a shattered fragment of a wall fresco. It's the face of a philosopher, or what's left of him. His painted eye, serene and intelligent, stares up at you from the rubble. The hammer didn't just break the plaster, it broke the idea behind the eyes. The idea of logic, of debate, of a world understood through reason instead of revelation. They are replacing a world of questions with a world of answers. Their answers, the only answers you will be allowed to have. One of them gently unrolls a scroll, and the papery whisper is the loudest sound in the room. It's a text on medicine, detailing the use of willow bark for pain. Knowledge the local priests call witchcraft. They possess a worldview so threatening to the established order that it had to be annihilated. The Albigensian Crusade wasn't a holy war. It was a hostile corporate takeover. The lords of the Languedoc, where these people flourished, were wealthy, tolerant, and cultured. The church and the northern French kings it allied with wanted their land, their trade routes, and their obedience. The heat from the bar washes over your face, drying the sweat on your skin. As you slowly, unwillingly, extend your trembling hand, a single, terrifying thought burns brighter and hotter than the iron itself. If God's justice is a lie, what other church truths are elaborate deceptions? As the sun dips below the horizon, casting long, bloody shadows across the land, you are left with one haunting realization. You are not just a stonemason repairing a wall. You are an archaeologist standing at the edge of a ruin, holding the last artifact of a brilliant, murdered civilization, your own. It was the moment this suppressed, world-changing technology finally broke free of its chains after centuries of violent suppression. Think of it. Just like a modern government might classify a technology that could destabilize the world, the church and the nobility knew what this was. A machine that could mass-produce knowledge, Bibles in the vernacular, radical philosophies, scientific truths, was a weapon that would mean the end of their world built on secrets and control. So they buried it. They hunted its creators. This was their most guarded secret. And there, at the bottom of the world, is another coastline. A great southern continent, free of the ice they say has encased it since the dawn of time. 99% of the world believes the maps of the church, the neat, tidy diagrams where monsters swim at the world's edge. They believe the age of discovery is yet to come. But you are looking at the proof that it is a lie. This is not an age of discovery. It is an age of rediscovery. The knowledge wasn't found. It was released, controlled. He said to anoint your door with holy water, to light blessed candles, to whip your own back in penance for the sins that brought this pestilence down from a vengeful God. You did none of that. Instead, your door is barred with your father's heaviest workbench, and the air inside is sharp with the scent of vinegar and burning rosemary. Your hands are raw from scrubbing the floors with lye. These are not God's remedies. They are secrets, whispers, a kind of heresy you cling to with the desperation of a drowning man. It was a reset, a great reset orchestrated by the new powers, the warlords who would become kings, the bishops who would become princes. They didn't want to inherit the Roman world. They wanted to erase it. They needed to create a new, simpler, more controllable reality. They needed ignorance. They needed fear. They needed you dependent. It's a terrifyingly familiar playbook, isn't it? The way a crisis can be allowed, even encouraged, to fester, only for a pre-planned solution to be offered. A solution that always involves more control, more surveillance, more power for the few. 99% of what we know about the groups the church destroyed comes from the meticulous records of their interrogators, their torturers, and their executioners. It's like trying to understand your own family by only reading the attack ads of their most hateful enemy. The church didn't just burn their bodies, it burned their books, their history, their very memory, and then wrote its own version of the ashes. You look at the faces in the candlelight. They are not the hollow-eyed fanatics from the priest's sermons. They are scholars, poets, healers. You look from the glowing iron to the priest's eyes. There is no divine judgment there, only the cold, hard certainty of a man who controls the board. You are a pawn in a play you never agreed to be in. You know it's a sham, a cruel piece of theater, but you are utterly powerless against the weight of 1,000 years of authority. To cry out the truth now would be to confess to heresy, a crime far worse than theft. The priest takes a step towards you. You look out from the scaffolding, over the fields where people toil under a sun they believe is pushed across the sky by an angel. You see the world not as it is, but as it has been made to be. The choice is now yours, to slide the brick back into place, to entomb the truth for another generation, to buy your own safety with a lie of silence, or to take the box, to become a keeper of the impossible secret, a ghost in their history. hunted for knowing that your people were not ignorant. They were silenced. And then you see the date, chiseled into the stone pedestal, preserved beneath the machine's shadow. It's over 200 years before the German goldsmith Gutenberg will ever be born. This is the moment the world cracks open. 99% of people will one day believe that the printing press was the spark of the Renaissance, a glorious invention that lifted humanity from darkness. That is the comforting lie they will be told. This machine, this proves the Renaissance wasn't a rebirth. It was an escape. That chart, you now understand, was not just a map of the heavens. It was the key. Your finger, trembling, traces a coastline that officially does not exist. It is not the jagged edge of Iberia or the familiar boot of Italy. It is a long, sweeping curve of land, thousands of miles across an ocean they say is empty. Unmistakable. You've seen sketches from mad sailors, ramblings from sun-scorched fools, but this is different. This is a Portolan chart, drawn with a precision that speaks of measured miles and observed shores. Then, the soft, heavy thud of a body hitting the pile. You hold your breath, counting the seconds until the groaning starts again, moving farther away. The air you breathe is thick with the ghosts of your neighbors, tasting of rot and cloying, sweet decay. It's a smell that seeps through the cracks around the window boards, a smell that has become the new texture of life itself. The priest told you to barricade yourself in, but only with prayer, because a population that has to beg a warlord for access to a well is a population that can be controlled. A population that has to pray to a priest for deliverance from the filth-borne plague is a population that can be managed. The great Roman roads, which carried legions, commerce, and ideas at astonishing speeds, are being torn up to build fortress walls. Why? Because a people who can travel and trade and talk to one another are dangerous. A people trapped and isolated. Muddy villages, ignorant of the world 5 miles away, are not. This wasn't a collapse. That evil, she says, is in the stone of the great cathedrals, in the gold of the bishop's ring, in the ambition of a church that wages war and hoards wealth in the name of a poor carpenter from Galilee. A man beside you, a weaver by his calloused hands, nods slowly. Here, in this hidden circle, women teach as equals to men. This is a truth so dangerous, it must be whispered in cellars. Here is the secret they will never teach you. The one buried under 800 years of propaganda. Sink or float, burn or heal. It was all determined by your social standing, your usefulness to the local lord. This is the medieval version of a show trial. It is a rigged algorithm, a fact check designed not to find truth, but to enforce an agenda. The faces in the crowd don't see a scientific demonstration. They see God's will made manifest. They see proof that power flows directly from heaven, through the church and into their lives. They see a warning. The metallic taste of fear coats your tongue, sharp and bitter. A grave for a future that was stolen. The knowledge in this box, and thousands of others like it, represented freedom. The freedom from fear, from ignorance, from dependence. The church didn't fear a peasant rebellion with pitchforks and torches. They feared a quiet revolution of healthy, educated, and self-sufficient people who no longer needed them. The monastery didn't fear the gear, it feared the mind that could conceive of it. The Dark Ages were not a period of accidental ignorance. They were a carefully managed, 500-year-long crime scene, and the evidence was systematically buried in places like this. Its metal, warped and blackened, slumped on a stone pedestal like a dying beast. You move closer, your torchlight dancing across its grotesque form. It's a machine, grotesquely familiar, yet impossible. You can see a great screw, a heavy plate, a frame built to withstand immense pressure. It is a press, and scattered around its base, half melted into puddles of lead and tin, are hundreds of tiny metal blocks. You kneel, ignoring the grime, and pick one up that has cooled. You turn it over in your palm. It's the letter A, a piece of movable type. The punishment for what you are doing is a pyre, but the secret unfurling in the candlelight is worth more than your life. It smells of forgotten libraries, of salt from a 1,000-year-old sea, and of the dry, brittle fear of the men who died to protect it. The vellum crackles, a sound like autumn leaves underfoot, as you unroll the forbidden knowledge passed down through your bloodline. This is the map, the reason for the whispers, the coded letters, the star chart you found sewn into your father's burial shroud. The deadliest lie ever told wasn't that the plague was God's wrath. It was that nothing could be done to stop it. You press your ear to the thick oak of your door, the wood vibrating with the world's last heartbeat. Out there, the cart groans. Its axle screams like a tortured man, a sound that has replaced the bird song of morning. Then comes the bell, a dead, toneless clang, followed by the collector's cry, "Bring out your dead." A pause. A door creaks open down the lane. A wet, dragging sound. 99% of people, now and 1,000 years from now, will believe this was all just a natural decay, the inevitable consequence of an empire's fall. But your eyes see the truth. You are witnessing a controlled demolition of reality itself. This is happening everywhere, from the sun-baked fields of Hispania to the misty forests of Britannia. The aqueducts, those majestic stone arteries that carried clean water to bustling cities, quenching the thirst of thousands and flushing away disease, they aren't just crumbling, they are being actively dismantled, stone by stone. Why? A cancer to be carved from the heart of Christendom. But you hear no prayers to Satan here. The only sound is the low, earnest voice of a woman named Esclarmonde, her words a thread of light in the oppressive dark. She speaks of a God of pure spirit, a God of love, trapped in a material world created by a lesser, evil power. Your guilt has already been decided. The priest's blessing will be short. Your test is to carry this glowing truth 9 paces. If your hand is unblistered after 3 days, you are innocent. A miracle. But the miracle is a myth, a terrifyingly effective tool for enforcing conformity. 99% of historians refuse to discuss this uncomfortable truth. These priests were masters of practical psychology and physics, using miracles as crowd control. They knew exactly how long to bless the water for a trial by water, subtly adjusting the temperature to ensure a specific outcome. A peasant who understands crop rotation and predicts the rains doesn't need to tithe his last grain to the church for a blessing on the harvest. A peasant who understands the stars doesn't need a priest to tell him his place in God's great plan. Power isn't held by the sword. It's held by controlling what people believe is possible. This box isn't just a secret. It's proof of a crime. Your fingers tremble as you close the lead-lined lid. The click is deafeningly final. This wall was not a hiding place. It was a tomb. You haven't uncovered a conspiracy. You've only arrived in time to witness its final, triumphant act of destruction. The great secret is gone. You wade through the paper graveyard. The silence here is a physical weight. The only sound is the soft, papery crunch of ash under your leather boots. A heartbreaking ASMR whisper of what has been lost. You imagine the scholars, the keepers of this place, dragged into the light, their screams swallowed by the cathedral bells above. But your eye catches something in the center of the room. It's not ash. It wasn't a holy object. It was the missing component. You haven't just been following a trail of breadcrumbs. You've been carrying the answer all along. The old man looks at you, his eyes ancient and pleading, seeing the sudden, stark realization on your face. The machine tells you where, he whispers, his voice cracking with the hope and terror of a 1,000-year-old question. And it tells you when. But what in God's name? What does it unlock? He pulls off a gauntlet, the scrape of metal on metal, setting your teeth on edge. His eyes find yours, and in them you see no piety, no chivalry. You see only the chilling calculus of a man who knows, with absolute certainty, that he is untouchable, and he has come for what you owe. You kneel, the cold of the exposed earth seeping through your thin leggings. Your fingers trace the ghost of an underfloor heating system, a ghost of impossible comfort. This is the hypocaust, a network of channels that once breathed warm air through this entire structure, a miracle of engineering that kept a family warm through the harshest winters. The men tearing it apart don't understand it. To them, it is just stone and tile, raw material. But their leaders, they understand perfectly. The greatest lies aren't shouted in the marketplace. They are written in the blood of the silenced and called history. You are sitting on a cold stone floor in a cellar that smells of damp earth and nervous sweat, and you are listening to a lie die. The light from a single tallow candle shudders, making the faces around you swim in and out of the darkness. They call themselves the bons hommes, the good people. The Pope, 1,000 miles away in his palace of marble and gold, calls them Cathars. He calls them heretics, devil worshippers. A recent metallurgical analysis of these holy ordeal irons reveals a secret the Church guarded for centuries. They were often forged from a porous, low-density iron, a trick metal. It holds less heat and cools exponentially faster than a solid blacksmith's bar. The priest isn't blessing the iron, he's stalling. Every second he chants, every prayer he mutters, is a carefully calculated moment for the searing heat to bleed away, just enough for the right person's hand. But you are not the right person. You are accused of stealing a pig from the Lord's reeve. Hiding them, like this, meant your family might survive another winter. The metallic taste of fear coats your tongue. You look at the impossible gear, its perfect teeth, a silent accusation. What machine did this belong to? And why was it hidden inside a monastery, the very heart of the system that wanted it destroyed? Then a chilling thought surfaces, a memory of a phrase the old woman in your village once whispered. The greatest heresy is a healthy peasant. A healthy peasant doesn't need to pray for a miracle cure. There, a rectangular shadow on the floor where a bookshelf stood before it was consumed by flame. The air is thick, almost suffocating, with the heartbreaking smell of knowledge turned to smoke. Your fingers tremble as you touch a wall, leaving a clean streak in the black soot. Underneath, You feel the cool, unforgiving stone that watched it all happen. Your heart, a frantic bird in your chest for weeks, finally plummets. It's over. You are too late. The Inquisition's spies, the quiet men in dark robes who hunt secrets like wolves hunt sheep, found this place first. For centuries, my family has guarded it, piece by piece, hoping to find the final part, the heart. He describes it, a single gear, made of a strange dark metal, with exactly 64 teeth, bearing the mark of a serpent eating its own tail. And the world stops. The air in your lungs turns to ice, because you know that gear. You can feel its impossible weight, its unnatural coldness, even now, through the leather of your satchel. The gear you found bricked up in the monastery wall. The relic the abbot died to protect. The contemporary accounts, the ones written by the people who actually lived through it, described knights as what they were: brutal, rapacious, and terrifyingly effective thugs. He dismounts. The sound of his metal-soled boots hitting the cobblestones echoes through the silent square. Clank, clank. It is not the sound of a hero. It is the sound of cold, hard power. The sound of a closing cage. He is the system made flesh, and his honor is a lie you are forced to believe at sword point. Men with hammers and dull eyes, their movements heavy and rhythmic, are prying priceless mosaics from the floor. The sound is a constant, sickening crunch, a sound like teeth breaking. This isn't salvage. This is an exorcism. You watch as a depiction of Orpheus, charming the beasts with his lyre, is splintered into 1,000 meaningless shards, shoveled into a crude wooden cart. Its destination? The foundation of a new church. A cold, dark, stone box where the only light allowed will be. The ceremony is over, but the true trial has just begun. But as you watch the priest draw the iron bar from the brazier, you know it's a lie. He holds it aloft, a captured piece of the sun, and the orange glow paints his face in the colors of a demon. His voice, a low and holy chant, echoes off the stone arches, but you hear the real sound underneath it all. The faint, hungry hiss of superheated metal meeting cold air. What they don't want you to know is that this trial was over before it began. The church and the nobility, in their stone castles and cathedrals, called it witchcraft. This was the original information war. Just as a modern government classifies a document as top secret to control a narrative, the medieval elite branded your wisdom as demonic to maintain their monopoly on truth and power. 99% of people today don't understand this. The witch hunts weren't just about religious hysteria. They were an act of intellectual genocide, an erasure of a decentralized, shared knowledge that threatened the very foundations of control. Knowing these secrets meant you were a threat. The final truth is not a victory. It's a tragedy. The map of light, a phantom of celestial mechanics you followed through sewers and forgotten crypts, has led you here, to the end. You slip through the final crack in the ancient cathedral's foundation, and the air changes. It's not the damp cold of stone you've grown used to. It's dry, and it tastes of grief. The chamber is a ghost, an absence. Piles of gray and black ash, soft as sinners' whispers, cover the floor in undulating drifts. Here, a mound that was once a stack of irreplaceable scrolls. In the precise center of the dizzying array of gears and dials, there is a hollow space, a perfect, empty setting waiting for its heart. The old man runs a cracked fingernail around the edge of the empty space. The sound is a faint, dry scrape against the metal. The sound of a long-healed wound, of something vital missing for generations. It is a key, he breathes, the words barely audible in the tomb-like silence. A clockwork map of not just the stars, but of time itself. The Venetians, however, would become the richest power in the known world. This is the ultimate form of historical sanitization, a lie so potent it has lasted 1,000 years. It's no different from modern attempts to rebrand colonial conquests as civilizing missions, or military interventions as humanitarian aid. The language changes, but the violence remains. They don't want you to know that 97% of the facts we have about chivalry come from romantic poems and stories written centuries after the fact, by authors who had never seen a battlefield. The greatest lie ever told isn't written in a book, it's a silence. A 1,000-year-long silence they named the Dark Ages. And the secret, the one they buried under a mountain of rubble and piety, is that the dark was manufactured. It was a choice, a weapon. You are standing in the skeleton of a world they are murdering. The air, thick with the dust of shattered marble and powdered plaster, tastes of endings. Around you, the bones of a Roman villa are being picked clean. You turn to face your husband, this stranger who now holds the deed to your life. The candlelight flickers in his eyes, and you see it's not love, not even lust that he feels. It's appraisal. He is looking at you the way a farmer looks at a broodmare, calculating her worth, her potential, her risks, and a new terrifying question freezes the blood in your veins. What happens if you cannot produce an heir? What does this man, backed by the full power of the church and the Lord, do with a barren field? The prayer the priest whispers isn't for your soul. It's a countdown. What 99% of people watching you, their eyes wide in the flickering torchlight, will never know is that this isn't a test of faith. It's an experiment in thermodynamics. Your skin crawls, 1,000 tiny insects of fear marching up your arms. The air in the church is cold, thick with the smell of damp stone, melting beeswax, and the sour breath of the unwashed crowd pressed in around you. They call this God's justice. You sing the folk songs in the tavern, and buried in the lyrics about a lost lover or a clever fox is a coded language, a recipe for a poultice that can draw the poison from a wound, a warning about which mushrooms bring visions and which bring death. You see the symbols carved into the bark of the old oak at the crossroads, and you know it means a traveling healer has passed through. A woman the church would call a witch. They never called it science. They called it tradition. The time to simply keep the secret is over. The time to open the library is now. The air grows colder, heavier. You can almost feel the weight of the silent, sleeping city outside. They are all dreaming of God and angels, while you are here, waiting for the sun to unlock a door that could get you all burned at the stake. A shiver runs through you that has nothing to do with the cold. The torch gutters, and for a moment, you are all plunged into absolute, suffocating darkness. Independent, verifiable truth. A machine that can predict an eclipse with perfect accuracy steals the miracle from the priest's sermon. A tool that can calculate longitude with unwavering precision allows a merchant to sail beyond the king's maps, beyond his control. It's the power to know without asking permission. It's a medieval form of encrypted, decentralized knowledge, a threat to the entire pyramid of power built on obedience and ignorance. You lean closer. The sheer genius of it is intoxicating. But you see what he means? The real objectives were to shatter the Byzantine monopoly on Eastern trade, to plunder the unimaginable wealth of Constantinople and the Levant, and most importantly, to export the violent, unemployed knights who were tearing Europe apart. Men exactly like the one now entering your village square. They were a destabilizing force, a generation of trained killers with no wars to fight. So the church, in its infinite wisdom, gave them one. It was the ultimate act of social engineering, wrapped in the banner of the cross. Two of those men, the Pope and the Emperor, would die under mysterious circumstances. Across the square, the gray-robed brother, the plagiarist, is no longer looking at the fire. He is looking directly at you. And he saw where you were looking. The fire roars, but the world goes silent. The machine you were trying to escape isn't a library of forbidden knowledge anymore. It's a man's gaze, and it has just locked you in its gears. It's the most sophisticated prison ever built, and its walls are made of shame, its bars forged from the fear of sin. You look past the altar to the heavy oak door of the church. For a fleeting, insane moment, you think of running. But where would you go? An unmarried woman, a broken contract, is worth less than nothing. You are property now. I now declare you man and wife, the priest announces, his voice booming with a finality that seals your fate. The small crowd murmurs its approval. A transaction witnessed, a deal concluded. What was the source of their forbidden anatomical knowledge? A secret so dangerous it had to be practiced in hidden cellars, far from the eyes of God. It is the evidence of a war you never knew was being fought. Many of you, the common folk, are part of a vast, underground network, a library without walls. You don't read the church's Latin, but you can read the phases of the moon in an almanac passed down from your grandfather, a book filled with astronomical and agricultural data that directly contradicts the priest's sermons on God's divine whims. He runs his hand over a specific flagstone, its surface worn smooth by millions of devout footsteps. Tonight, he says, his voice a low tremor of anticipation and fear, is the night. He looks up at the rose window, a black void in the stone wall. When the first ray of the solstice sun clears the eastern hills, it will pass through the heart of that window. It will strike this floor, and it will show us the first step. He looks at you, his eyes burning with an intensity that spans centuries of hidden defiance. You think of the stories sailors tell of the Antikythera mechanism, a clockwork computer pulled from a 2,000-year-old shipwreck, a device so advanced that historians dismissed it as a hoax for decades. This feels like its descendant. They called our treasures relics, the old man says, his voice trembling with a fury centuries old. Holy junk, meaningless trinkets, but they weren't relics. They were machine parts. He points a trembling, wrinkled finger toward the heart of the device. This is why they hunted us. This is the sin they could never forgive. He taps the metal. You can feel the metallic taste of fear in your mouth as he draws closer. The collective breath of the village held in a single terrified lung. The secret he unknowingly serves began a generation ago, in gilded rooms you will never see. 99% of people will never learn, that the Crusades were not a simple war for God. The three people who knew the truth, the Pope, the Byzantine Emperor, and the shrewd Venetian merchants, understood the real game. The truth they guarded, the Holy Land, was a pretext. One specific diagram in one specific book, and you just saw it burn. The hope in your chest collapses into cold dread. All is lost. But then you see it. As the soldier threw the last book, a single page, ripped and torn, fluttered away from the fire, carried by the hot air. It dances like a wounded moth before settling in the shadows of a nearby alley, its secrets still intact. Your heart leaps, but as your eyes dart to the page, you see you are not the only one who noticed. It's a timeless strategy of social engineering, a ghost that haunts our world today in bitter arguments over who has the right to marry, the right to have children, the right to define a family. The institution always writes the rules to protect the institution. The priest takes your other hand, his fingers surprisingly cold and dry, like old parchment. He guides the iron ring onto your finger. It feels less like a circle of love and more like the first link in a chain. The metallic taste of fear floods your mouth. This isn't a holy sacrament. He turns to you, his eyes catching the light, and they look impossibly old. "We save the body," he whispers, his voice rough as granite. "But the church owns the soul. Never speak of what you saw." You nod, the secret settling like a cold stone in your gut. You helped save a life using knowledge that could have you all burned. But as you begin to clean the blood from the floor, a new, more terrifying question takes root in your mind. Where did they learn this? The metal is a strange, dark silver that doesn't rust, its teeth cut with a precision your finest tools could never match. Beside it rests a small star chart, etched onto a piece of smooth, black slate. But the constellations are wrong. You know the sky, the shepherd's star, the great plow. This is a map of a different heaven, one seen from a place that is not here. This technology shouldn't exist. This knowledge is impossible. What they don't want you to know is that this is not an anomaly. The great library of pre-Christian knowledge they managed to save from the burnings. This is the most profound form of rebellion you can possibly imagine. Hiding the truth in plain sight, within the very symbols of your oppressor. Just as a modern hacker might hide gigabytes of forbidden data in the seemingly innocent code of a family photograph, these Masons built an encyclopedia inside a prison. They encrypted their secrets in stone and light, ensuring that only the truly faithful, those faithful to knowledge, would ever be able to read them. The old man kneels, his joints protesting with a soft groan. With a reverence that makes your breath catch, he pulls back the cloth. It rests on the wood like a fallen star. It's a device of interlocking brass and silver rings, gears of a mind-boggling complexity, all covered in symbols that are neither Latin nor Greek, nor any script you have ever seen. You recognize its basic form, an astrolabe, but its intricacy is alien. This level of craftsmanship, this mechanical genius, shouldn't exist for another 400 years. It feels like looking at something from the future, or a past so distant it has been forgotten by everyone. He is here to collect the Lord's taxes, and his gleaming longsword is a very clear, very sharp reminder of the consequences of refusal. His armor, a product of sophisticated metallurgy far beyond your comprehension, makes him a walking tank. Your pitchfork, your wood axe, they are nothing against this walking fortress. This is the core of the system. A technological advantage so profound it creates a permanent, unassailable ruling class. He is the fist of that system, and you are the grain to be threshed. It's not just medieval, it's timeless. It's the corporation buying a patent for a cure it will never release because sickness is more profitable. It's the government stamping classified on documents that don't protect the nation, but protect the guilty. They are not afraid of heresy. They are afraid of you. Afraid of what you might build, what you might think, who you might become, if you had access to the tools they keep for themselves. Induced ignorance isn't a byproduct of the system. It is the system. You came here for one thing. Every church record, every confession manual is obsessed with this moment and what comes after. They fixate on controlling intimacy, not out of a fear for your immortal soul, but out of a terror of illegitimate children who could make a claim on the land. Every rule, who you can sleep with, how, when, is a clause in a legal framework designed to protect the clean, patriarchal transfer of property, because it interfered with the single most powerful tool of control the church possessed, the doctrine that suffering was God's will. A surgeon who could successfully defy God's plan wasn't a healer, he was a revolutionary, a threat to the entire power structure. It's the same cold logic used today when institutions suppress data that contradicts their profitable or political narratives. Control the story, and you control the people. Thomas lives, his breathing evens out, a soft rhythm in the sudden silence. The master surgeon stitches the scalp with a horsehair thread. His movements, a final, quiet prayer. It helps more than you know. Drop a comment with the medieval fact that surprised you most, or what role you think you'd play if you were born in the year 1287. Let's begin and live the life they never got to finish. But be warned, some truths about the past are harder to forget than others. Your heart hammers against your ribs, a frantic drum in the sudden silence. The box contains no gold, no jewels. Nestled in a bed of dried, brittle herbs lies a single, intricately machined gear. He shows you how to read it. The placement of certain windows to align with the solstices. The number of pillars in the choir corresponding to a lunar cycle. The geometric patterns on the floor forming a celestial map. It's a machine for calculating the heavens. And on one specific day of the year, one day they encoded into the patterns, the sun will perform their final miracle. It's a treasure map, but not for gold. It points to something infinitely more valuable, the location of their central archive. He leads you to the center of the room, to a heavy oak table draped in faded velvet. 99% of the world believes our ancestors were simple, superstitious folk. They believe the Romans' knowledge died with their empire, and that humanity stumbled in the dark for a millennium. They want you to believe that progress is a straight line, always leading upwards to them. But the deepest secret, the one they buried under a mountain of heresy and burned bodies, is that the line was broken. The sun catches his helmet, and for a moment, he is a star fallen to earth, a figure from the songs the bards sing. They sold you a myth of chivalrous knights, of honor-bound protectors. That is the lie. The reality is riding towards you now, a brutal enforcer clad in a technological miracle. What they don't want you to know is that the code of chivalry was one of history's most successful marketing campaigns. A thin veneer of piety painted over a system of violent subjugation. He is not here to save you from a dragon. He finishes his sketch, nods, and hands the original book to the soldier, who mindlessly tosses it into the inferno. They aren't just erasing history, they are stealing it, then burying the evidence under mountains of ash. You hear it over the roar of the fire, a soft, wet sizzle as the book's spine, held together with animal glue, dissolves. A final, whispered gasp of a dying world. The ink, a black blood of human genius, bubbles on the page and then vanishes into nothing. And in that moment of terrible clarity, you see the truth of this machine of control. It was a promise between people, recognized by people. But the church couldn't tax a promise. It couldn't control a union it didn't officiate. So, they systematically erased it, replacing the warmth of community with the cold iron of doctrine. They demonized it as pagan, as ungodly, as sin. They didn't save souls, they seized control. The man beside you shifts his weight. You hear the soft scrape of his leather shoe against the flagstone. An ASMR trigger for the dread coiling in your stomach. He is a stranger, yet tonight he will own you. That is precisely why it works. This isn't a gamble. In the few monastic orders and secret guilds that practice this, the documented survival rate is over 70%. This is the secret they buried. This is the truth they don't want you to know. Archaeological digs at sites like the Sutra Isle in Scotland have proven it. Unearthing medical waste pits filled with evidence that shatters the official narrative. Surgical anesthetics, potent painkillers made from hemlock and opium poppy, and specialized tools of impossible delicacy. This knowledge wasn't lost, it was banned, it was murdered. Why? It feels ancient, a pocket of winter sealed in the summer stone. As you pry it open, the sweet, sick smell of rotting vellum and something metallic, like old blood, hits the back of your throat. This isn't a saint's forgotten relic. This isn't treasure. It's a secret. You've never seen a toothbrush. You believe demons live in fog. Your town blames goats for the plague. Welcome to the Middle Ages. But the story they told you is the darkest lie of all. If you love immersive, real storytelling about survival, belief, and forgotten lives, hit like and subscribe. It's an act of profound heresy to bring the work of astrologers into this sacred space. He places a brass astrolabe beside it, its interlocking rings gleaming in the torchlight. The metallic click-clack of him adjusting the rule echoes like a hammer blow in the silence. They built a computer, he whispers, his finger tracing a line on the chart, and then pointing to a high window on the southern wall. A giant astronomical clock. Most cathedrals are oriented east, towards Jerusalem. This one is off by 3 degrees. A mistake? No, it's a calibration. Shelves carved from the living rock, groan under the weight of scrolls, leather-bound codices, and clay tablets that look impossibly ancient. The torchlight dances, revealing diagrams of star charts that defy church doctrine and anatomical drawings of a precision that feels like blasphemy. This is a library of everything that was meant to be erased. The church taught that the world was dark before their God brought light. The old man whispers, his voice a dry rustle, a convenient lie. They didn't bring the light, they put it out. 3 men knew the truth about the First Holy War. 2 of them would die with the secret locked behind their teeth. The one that survived built an empire on the lie. But that is a story of palaces and whispers. Your story, right now, is about the silence that falls over your village. It's a heavy, suffocating quiet, broken only by the rhythmic squeal of 1,000 leather straps straining against plates of steel. You see him crest the hill. He takes the book, opens it with an expert's touch, and for a breathless minute, his quill flies across a fresh sheet of parchment he holds on a small wooden board. You can just make out the drawing, a complex series of gears and levers powered by a water wheel, a trip hammer, a device that can crush rock and forge steel with the power of a river, a machine that could build a new world, a technology their own monasteries will claim to have invented a century from now. Your body, a vessel for the only thing that matters, a legitimate heir. You try to focus on the stained glass image of a saint, but your mind drifts to the hidden knowledge, the truths whispered by old women when the priest is out of earshot. 99% of the people in this very church are unaware that their great-grandparents didn't consecrate their unions like this. They practiced hand fasting. They stood before their community, not a cleric. Their hands bound together with a simple cord, their vows witnessed by the sun and the soil. The academics would mock this as peasant superstition, but here, in the shadows, you know the truth. The wine cleanses. It kills the invisible demons that fester in the flesh, a practice now known to be an effective antiseptic. He begins the trepanation. You hear the sickening, intimate scrape of his drill against Thomas's skull, a dry, whispering sound that makes the hairs on your arms stand up. He is drilling a hole in the man's head to relieve the pressure on his brain. This act feels like a blasphemy, an affront to God himself, and it is. Unquote. High on the scaffolding, far from the abbot's prying eyes, you are repairing a crumbling section of the outer wall. Chip, chip, tap. The rhythm is your life. But then, a new sound. Your chisel strikes something hollow, a dull thud that doesn't belong in solid stone. A vibration travels up your arm, a secret hum in the bone. Your breath catches. With the edge of your trowel, you pry at a loose brick. It gives way with a gritty sigh, revealing a dark cavity within the wall. Inside sits a small, lead-lined box, unnaturally cold to the touch. Tucked beside its monstrous claws, almost invisible from the ground, is a perfectly carved gear wheel, a symbol of mechanics, of a universe that runs on laws, not just miracles. A few feet away, woven into the stone acanthus leaves of a pillar's capital, is the face of the Green Man, the ancient pagan god of the forest, staring out with vine-covered eyes from inside his holy prison. These weren't random decorations. They were a message, a curriculum. The younger man unrolls a star chart on the cold flagstones, the vellum crackling like dry leaves. Every few feet, a niche carved into the rock holds a human skull, its empty sockets staring out as you pass, silent guardians of this forbidden place. He calls them the Perfecti, the last of the true Cathars who chose death by starvation in their besieged fortress rather than renounce their knowledge to the Crusaders. Their silence is a testament to the power of what they protected. The tunnel opens into a circular chamber, and you gasp. It's a library, but not like the monasteries above, with their chained Bibles and pious histories. The connection is a sudden, cold shock. The masons who carved these stones, who knew the secret of the arches, knew something else, a secret of a different kind of power. The question freezes you where you stand. What forbidden knowledge did they possess? And what machine does that single impossible gear belong to? Not a different God, but the idea that a man could be his own God, his own master, with a mind sharpened by the thoughts of the ancients. Knowledge is power, and they have built their entire world on the monopoly of it. And here is the secret that 99% of people, even now, will never understand. This isn't just destruction, it's curation. You watch a gray-robed brother, his face shadowed by his cowl, stand near the cart. Before a soldier can grab a particularly thick manuscript, the brother stops him. The air is thick with the smell of cheap incense and wet wool, a holy perfume failing to mask the raw scent of the earth clinging to everyone's boots. The priest drones on about holy matrimony, but you hear the unspoken language of the real transaction. Your father's sharp nod to the local lord, the glint in the Lord's eye not of blessing, but of satisfaction. Two small parcels of land, once separated by a stubborn rocky ridge, are now joined. You are the legal fence, the living seal on the new map. Your future is a deed. 99% of people believe this is a butcher's gamble, a desperate, agonizing last resort performed by a brute with a rusty saw. They're wrong. The master surgeon, your teacher, moves with a frightening calm. His hands, illuminated by a single guttering candle, are not the clumsy paws of a butcher, but the precise, swift instruments of a forbidden art. He ignores the official medicine of the universities, the nonsense about balancing humors. Instead, he uncorks a bottle of wine, dousing the horrific wound and his gleaming tools. 99% of people believe medieval peasants were ignorant, mud-caked simpletons. This is a deliberate lie, crafted over centuries to make you feel safe in your modern world. The truth is far more unsettling. The year is 1250. The air is thick with the smell of damp earth and the distant, cloying scent of the monastery's herb garden. You are a stonemason, and your hands, calloused and mapped with 100 tiny scars, know the language of rock better than any prayer.